So a lot of conservation is thinking about open habitats, and I'd like to discuss this and the great work that's being done. I'm here with Naomi Smith from
Hello.
Forestry England. Hi. So why are open habitats so important?
Yeah, so what we mean by open habitat, particularly here in Breckland in East Anglia, is particularly thinking about heathland habitats. And that means an area which is unshaded, so doesn't have too many trees shading the ground. Also, it's about having bare ground as well, which helps to reduce competition from other species. And so within the Breckland area, the reason open habitat is so important is because there's a whole suite of rare species that are dependent on those habitats to thrive. And
these are plants and invertebrates and birds and all sorts of things.
Yeah, plants, invertebrates, and different species of ground nesting birds as well, particularly in Thetford Forest, where we are today in Breckland. That's woodlark and nightjar.
We've been hearing woodlark just now, haven't we?
Yes, yeah. It's a gorgeous day, nice sunny day, so the woodlark have been singing. But yeah, the reason why particularly the plants and the insects which are codependent on the plants are really well adapted to this environment is for a number of different reasons. So we have a very unique geology here. In the Brecks we have very shallow chalk, which is very close to the surface, and very shallow sands as well. And we have these amazing kind of stripes of chalky soil and then very sandy soil. So it's a very nutrient poor environment, and those plants are very well adapted to that geology. Alongside that we have the climate here, so East Anglia is the driest region in the UK. We receive very low amounts of rainfall, so lovely place to live.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also we have very extreme temperature conditions as well. So in the summer it can get over 40 degrees. Over the winter we can have ground temperatures of less than minus 15 degrees. So again, those plants are really well adapted to thrive here. And that means actually we've got some really rare species. So there's a piece of work called the Breckland Biodiversity Audit, which highlights that we have 72 species which are only or mainly found in this area, and that's globally. So some really rare biodiversity which is dependent on this type of habitat.
Which is fabulous. And what have you been doing about that?
Yeah, so historically we've done a number of different things. Back in the 2000s, there was a project called the Tomorrow's Heathland Heritage Project.
Which is where we are now, is that?
Where we are, part of where we are now, yeah. So that project was looking to restore 300 hectares of open habitat from what you can see around us, which is the backdrop of Thetford Forest, which is really a modern forest that was planted up in the 1920s as a strategic timber reserve. So the Tomorrow's Heathland Heritage Project was about reverting 300 hectares of forest to what was there previously, which was this heathland environment, historically, which was managed by roaming livestock, but also rabbits as well. So in the medieval period, rabbit warrening was a traditional practice in Breckland, and the action of the rabbits keeping the grass sward nice and short, but also the burrowing action helped with that kind of mechanical ground disturbance element, which again is reducing vegetation competition.
So this area here at Cranage Heath, this was all conifer plantation? And
it was, yeah, until 2000. Then in 2000, this was the model of essentially coming in, clearing an area of conifer, fencing it off, and then bringing in grazing livestock to do the same sort of action as what would have been done historically. So it's great. I mean, here, the last forest-wide survey of ground nesting birds that happened, we had 14 territories of woodlark just on this one site. We have records of many of the protected plant species as well.
And just in looking around, you can see how remarkably diverse it is.
Yeah, there's lots of lichens, mosses, lots of different of the protected plant species as well. So here we have records for basil thyme and
smooth rupturewort and all sorts of things.
And we have an amazing group of people who come out and survey these sites and help us keep tabs on what we've got here.
So it's fabulous you've got these sites. What's the future? What needs to be done next, do you think?
Yeah, so very good question. So there were two key pieces of research really that came out in 2010. One was the Lawton Report and the other was the Breckland Biodiversity Audit. So both really were highlighting similar ideas of what we needed to do to take the next step. The Lawton Report came out with these principles of more, bigger, better and more connected. So the idea of we need to reverse the biodiversity crisis in the UK. How do we do that? Using those principles. And the Breckland Biodiversity Audit was thinking about that specifically in the Brecks. And what that highlighted is the lack of connectivity. So it's great that we have these large heathland sites, but actually if there's a disturbance event in one of those heathland sites, a whole population of a particular rare plant could be wiped out. So we need to create connectivity, particularly in the landscape, to create resilient populations of these rare species. So the other thing that the audit pointed out was that the trackways, what we call forest rides, that run throughout Thetford Forest are really significant in terms of the rare plants. Many of the rare plants, the seed source is still there in those trackways. And so what the audit suggested is that one of the best ways we could create open habitat in the context of the forest was by creating a network of open habitat corridors that link up the existing blocks of heathland that we already had. So that's what we're trying to do now.
And you've been busy doing that. Should we go and have a look to see what you've been doing?
Let's go and have a look.
Let's do that now. Well, this is impressive. So this is conservation in action. So what's happening here and why are you doing it here?
Yeah, great question. So as we talked about at the previous site, this is an example of where we're creating these widened trackways through the forest. So an open habitat network that links up those existing heathland sites throughout the forest. So creating that connectivity at a landscape scale. Why are we doing it specifically here? So at the start of the project, about two and a half years ago now, we worked with the University of East Anglia to essentially develop a model to understand where would be the best place to create areas of open habitat that are within the context of the forest that are adjacent to our existing rides, which is where we have that remnant source of seed. And what that model was based on is primarily factors like soil pH. So we were looking for the very highly chalky soils, so the highly calcareous soils, and highly acidic soils, so the very sandy soils as well.
Where you get all the specialised species.
Exactly. So it was using soil pH, but also historic records of where we've got plant species already along our ride edges. So again, it's about creating the right habitat in the right place, adjacent to where we know we've got existing populations, but then how do we link that up across the landscape?
And tell me about the shape of what have you actually done here?
Yeah, so the sequence of operations is essentially looking to widen what would have been probably about sort of 10 metres wide, tree line to tree line.
So I guess the trees used to come at the edge here and you removed all of these up to here.
Yeah, exactly. So they used to come up right to that edge. So removing the trees to up to about a width of approximately 40 metres, tree line to tree line. And the reason for the 40 metres is so that this this area is basically exposed to sunlight for the majority of the day. As we talked about on the previous site, these species need that kind of exposure to sunlight, lack of competition, lack of shading to really thrive. So first step is taking the trees off. The next stage is what we can see behind us, which is essentially then coming in and removing the stumps, and we do that in a very sensitive way because of the incredible archaeology that we have in the forest. So that's done using a stump grinder, and then the final stage is what we can see the machine is doing at the moment, which is an excavator just literally scraping off the very top layer of nutrient-rich organic soil, and that soil's built up pretty much over the last 100 years of 2 rotations of forestry, that soil is very, very nutrient rich, which favours the trees often, but also other vegetation like bracken, bramble, which we've got plenty of and not necessarily what we want. And underneath,
you can really see the difference, can't you?
You can.
The subsoil. And
so this is the mineral soil that we're wanting to scrape down to, which has a much higher sand content compared to this, which is obviously much more rich in that organic matter.
And the competitive species would do very well here, wouldn't they? And exclude the specialised species.
Exactly, yeah. So the rare plant species that we're trying to provide habitat for thrive on this more nutrient poor soil. And again, that's why we need to do this. We need to start the process off, create initially that suitable habitat, and also in the long term, keep reducing that nutrient content over time. And the way we do that is through cutting and collecting vegetation. So we keep removing nutrient, and also doing some mechanical disturbance as well, which looks like creating bare ground patches back into the sort of matrix of the habitat.
And we know from lots of experiments around here that mechanical disturbance really works, doesn't it?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, we've run a number of trial sites, test plots, trying different forms of mechanical disturbance. So whether that's with an excavator doing some shallow scraping, whether that's with a machine which discs the soil, so kind of almost creates plough lines through the soil. And yeah, what we find is that when we remove that competition, when we create that unshaded bare ground, we end up with populations of the plants we're looking to provide habitat for. So Spanish catchfly,
huge, great field, huge areas of it. It's just amazing how well that responds.
Yeah, and particular species like we've got the perennial narwhal as well, which is in Thetford Forest, and really rare species. It's only found in Breckland in the whole world, and now historically has existed at a very few number of sites, so 4 sites, but we've been able to do translocations of that plant population, keep that bare ground injection kind of happening, and it's now thriving at 10 sites across the forest. But yeah, really specialised to this environment and really dependent on this kind of physical ground disturbance.
Brilliant. So I guess what we now is instead of isolated sites, we've got sites being linked with this sort of scalloped shape, so there's lots of variation in microclimate, etc., and then going all the way along, connecting up all these different important sites.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really that landscape scale connectivity enabling those existing pockets of plant populations, invertebrates, to actually spread across the landscape. And it also works for our ground nesting bird species as well. So within 6 months of starting to create some of these areas, we had woodlark nests, nightjar nests.
Oh wow, fabulous.
So yeah, it works across a whole range of species, which is really, really great to see. So obviously work in progress, but we'll continue to monitor it going forward and hope that it does its job for the plants and invertebrates and biodiversity of the Brecks.
Really hope so. It's really the Breckland that's the Lawton Report in action, isn't it? Really being put into practice.
Yeah.
So your Forestry England. So how does you're getting rid of the forest here? How does that work?
Yeah, so we manage, we're the largest land manager in England, which is a wonderful opportunity really to work at a landscape scale. But it also means that we're managing the landscape across a range of different objectives. So historically we were set up as a kind of organisation to replenish timber reserves after the First World War. But now we're seeking to manage forests across England for a whole range of different objectives. So that includes timber production, which is still really important, but also biodiversity. We have an amazing opportunity, being such a significant land manager, to be able to work at scale across landscapes and think about that connectivity element. And alongside biodiversity as well, thinking about recreation, providing spaces for people to access and enjoy nature. So yeah, we're constantly balancing all those different objectives and trying to deliver for everything, really.
Yeah, so it doesn't look great for nature at the moment, but I'm sure this is going to be fabulous, and look forward to coming here next year or two and seeing some amazing nature here.
Yeah, hopefully it will sort of look like these amazing corridors of of wildflowers essentially. I mean, a lot of them are very, very small, and specialists get very excited. But yeah, it's adding diversity, structural diversity into the forest environment as well. So yeah, hopefully it looks good for people to walk through as well.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you.